Welcome to this one-on-one here on Teal Town USA. I'm Erik Kuhre. Thank you for joining me today. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button down below. It does go a long way. And don't forget to hit that notification bell when we go live after every single Sharks game, home and away, or we have a special guest like today. On this edition, we talked to a gentleman who has been around hockey in Northern California for quite a bit of time. But as the Winter Olympics continue in Beijing, he would be one of the guys who planted a seed for hockey in China. And with that, we welcome Chris Collins to the program. Chris, how are you, good sir?
Very good, Erik. How are you, man?
Doing well. It's great to finally chat with you, chat some hockey with you, my friend. I know we've gone back and forth on Facebook for quite some time, and I thought this, with everything going on with the Olympics and everything, thought bring you in and talk about your experiences and memories, not just with the China Sharks, but also in NorCal.
Yeah. I mean, last time I knew you, I didn't have any wrinkles in my neck that we talked. So, yeah, it's been a long time. I apologize for those.
I didn't have any wrinkles at all, and I still had a decent amount of hair.
Well, you are a Sharks fan, so yeah, I'm surprised you do have hair left after all the years that have gone on. But yeah, surely I'd be remiss in not taking shots, right? So anyway, yeah, so thank you for having me on, bud. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. So let's get into it. In fact, some of the longtime Sacramento viewers would know you from FM 102 in Sacramento at the Morning Zoo. And then, I was like, okay, what happened? Next thing you know, I see you're the radio radio commentator with Dan Rusanowski on the radio.
Yeah.
Like, that was a quick little left turn. How did that come about?
Well, I had been around hockey my whole life. I'd done stick boy work with the Seals when I was a kid, through summer camps, and Ernie Hickey became a lifelong family friend, and then some of the other old boys that were there. And then when the Shamrocks came to the Cow Palace in '77, Len Shapiro basically said to me, hey, if you want to come up and work, you can. And I'd originally scheduled to try to go up and maybe work with Roy Story, who, clearly was one of the great play-by-play men of all time, and especially in hockey. He was a phenomenal guy. He was later in life, and then the trainer they had, an equipment guy, was a strange guy. He was a former World Hockey Association guy. San Diego was his home. Didn't like San Francisco, and he just walked out. So they said, "Well, can you be the equipment guy and help out the trainers? We're going to have part-time trainers." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I ended up being basically, the jack of all trades. I assisted the trainers. I was the equipment guy. I was a senior in high school at Santa Clara High School. Luckily, I was able to manipulate all my teachers. I gave them all season tickets. And I said, look, I may be on the road. I may not be here, but I'll do the work and I'll turn it in. And it was an unbelievable season with that franchise. I mean, it was anything and everything. I mean, Slapshot would be G-rated to what I learned at 17 in the National and the Pacific Hockey League.
Right.
And prepared me well to be a morning radio broadcaster. That's for sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And to do that in you said your senior year of high school?
Yeah. I was 17.
Gosh. That's crazy to do that. I mean, and to experience all that and be like, well, I might miss out on prom, but hey, I have to make sure I have these sticks ready to go for the Shamrocks. And if I'm not mistaken, was it the first or second year that the Shamrocks won it all?
First year. We won it the first year. It's funny you bring up prom, because we were in a game in Long Beach, and I'll tell you, it was so bizarre. Okay, I would go to school, get out at basically after lunch, right? Because the senior, you have like 3 classes or whatever. Right. I would race to the Cow Palace, load everything. We'd get on primarily 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. flights into Southern California or into San Diego, race to the arenas, either the sports arena or both LA Sports Arena or Long Beach or to San Diego. We'd set up, do the games, then we'd race back afterwards because back then all the airlines, remember, were regulated by the government, so there were always flights going to San Francisco every hour. So we'd be back at 1:30 in the morning. We'd go to back to the Cow Palace, hang everything. Then I'd be home by 3:30 or 4, get up and go to school, and that's how I existed during that time. It was insane. Okay. But it was, so anyway, in Long Beach one night, there's probably 10 people in the crowd. And this girl came up and she said she had to come with her brother on a Cub Scout trip or something. And she started talking to me during the game. Okay. So I'm like trying to watch the bench and throw towels at guys. And this girl's talking to me. And I said, hey, if I take you to my senior prom, will you let me finish the game? She goes, sure. And that's who I brought to my senior prom, was a girl that I met in Long Beach. And she was a really nice girl. She went on to UCLA and everything else. But anyway, you brought that up. I had to tell you that because I don't think I've ever told that story. That's how I met her.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, working a Shamrocks game in Long Beach. What a story that was. And
picking up prom dates in the middle of it. Nice job, Slick.
Yeah, that was good. That was slick. That's where that name came from. That's like, yeah, that was very slick on my part.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Oh man.
Yeah. Funny stuff, man.
Were you? How did you get into hockey? Was it just happened to be with the appeal of the Seals, or how did it come about?
When I was young, I was in a skating family, a roller skating family. My grandfather owned a real well-known rink in the Bay Area for like 38 years. My mom was a world champion figure skater and then pro afterwards. And my mom actually, at one time was featured on the old ABC Wide World of Sports in 1961. She basically is credit for all pairs lifting in skating that then went over to ice. It started in roller. And my sister was a national figure skating champion. So I was playing roller hockey before I played ice hockey. And then I got taken to a Seals game in '68 that I remember. That was the first NHL game. I guess I went to Seals games at the Cow Palace when I was really young. But, that would have been running around the Cow Palace, right? Getting into trouble, not watching the game. So that was the first time. And then I played youth hockey and continued to play roller hockey at a pretty high level. And then lo and behold, the Seals left. And when the Shamrocks came, I knew Len from his work with the Seals and, just said, hey, it's my senior year of high school. I want to have some fun. I only have 3 classes and, one thing led to another. So, but I had been around the game the whole time. Later on, obviously I coached. I had a couple of national championship teams that I coached. And then, my work in the NHL. And then I, left the Sharks and went into scouting full time. And then went into a GM level and player personnel level. And that's when I went and got the Asia deal. And I got the China deal. I had better offers than the Sharks. The Stars offered me $5 million for myself personally to be that club to go to China with me. And I turned them down. And Vancouver offered me money, and so did the Rangers. And the Islanders had already been there and screwed the situation up. So, yeah, it's sort of a weird situation, but I went with what I knew and where my friends were, Greg Jameson and, I knew, obviously Willie and, everybody there. And I knew that, I would probably scale well with those guys there because they knew me, right? They trusted me and, I could, ask for things that I needed or lean on them if I needed them as well. So that's sort of the hockey background in a nutshell.
Gotcha. No, I've been curious as to, because of course we hear, they're non-traditional market. It's like hockey's been around for some time in the Bay Area, especially the early incarnation with the Seals, and then when they came into the NHL and everything. So that's always a good look into the past folks for that. So I mean, you did your number of years, on the radio, and then with TV on.
Yeah, a couple of years on TV. Yes.
Yeah. And what's one of the biggest moments in that time from that? Obviously, you were a part of the great '94 run that myself
that was amazing,
among others I'll never forget that year.
Yeah, it was interesting. Calgary was in my year 4 for us was interesting. My best friend Nick Alexander, who my older son's named after, was getting married, and I was the best man, and we just never thought we'd be in this situation. It was on a Sunday, I'll never forget, and we played Game 7 in Calgary, and it went into double OT, and we won. And it was just a surreal thing, right? And everything went in slow motion because it was here again, another year. We had done this with this group of vets that we had, which they never should have broken the 93-94 team up. They screwed up in a major way, and it was because you had too many Chiefs and not enough Indians making decisions in there, okay? And anyway, so I have to wake my best friend up at 2:30 in the morning in Calgary and say, hey, dude, we're getting on a plane to go to Detroit. I'm not going to be at the wedding in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
So luckily, he coached at UCLA and was an assistant with the 49ers. He got Ricky Neuheisel, who was in the wedding party, to stand in for me, who's an old friend, and be the best man. But I'll never forget, we finally got back to Danny and I did, back to the hotel, and I'm guessing, it was like 1:45. And there was nothing open. And they said, well, we brought in dinner and everything back to the hotel, so go down and eat. And we went into this room at this hotel, the Calgary Westin, where everybody used to stay. And sitting by himself in there was Ray Whitney. So, we all knew, obviously. I mean, we all traveled together. So, we didn't think anything of it. We went and sat down, gave him his space. And he's like, hey, Slick, hey, Danny, you guys can sit near me. So we just sat there. No one said a thing for 25 minutes. He just sort of sat there and ate. And then Witz got up and I said, hey, Witz, thanks, man. That means an extra 7 games I get paid. So I appreciate it. So and he started laughing and he walked out. But, it's one of those surreal moments that, only happen when special things happen, right? It was just, right. And if you knew the story of Witz,
of course,
coaches, they didn't like him. The scouts thought he was too small. The coaches thought he wasn't tough enough. This and that and this and that. Well, guess what? They forgot one thing, is that he knew how to play the game. Mm-hmm. And if you let him play enough, he was going to do way more better things, you'll pardon the butchering of the language, than he was doing bad things. And that's why Witz had a long career, and that's why he was an all-star and major junior, and why he's wearing a cup ring. And he contributed everywhere he went. It just took the game to modify, okay, to understand his talent. Fascinating. Okay. Fascinating how, players are perceived. And that was why I went over to the scouting side and went into the development side, because that's where my strengths were as well. And to me, that's what lights my fire, is being able to, get through it, find those athletes, or notice athletes and know, what, if this kid stays where he's going, people are going to say, whoops, we missed. And, I've been lucky to work with kids now that have been drafted, work hand to hand with kids who were drafted, help reclamation projects, also tell other kids, hey, this is what it takes. You don't do it, you're not going to get there. And those are all things that you can't really do when you broadcast, right? Because broadcast, there's a set of expectations cognitively to the ears or to the picture that's told. And, it's real difficult, to share and build in those elements. And that's why I'm glad I made the steps that I did.
Yeah, it's, and getting back to Whitney, who's one of my favorite players of all time, because
great player, man.
He was awesome. He had the great skill set and speed and everything. Around that time, that was when everybody was like, "Oh, we got to get these big, tall guys."
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, no disrespect to Victor Kozlov or anybody.
No, not at all.
But
that's right.
But all these guys were just, looking for size and everything. And I think right now would have been a great time for Witz to be in the NHL, because I think you see more of the speedier kind of player. But he carved a way around it after he left San Jose, which was great part. And for that matter, great job, for other scouts finding him. So
pedigree. Pedigree, brother.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, you can't just look for the status quo or the hip thing that goes on.
No, look at, I mean, I know you were the president of the Teemu Riihi RV fan club and he let you down, but No, you look at
Yeah.
pedigree's a big deal. You know, Witz and Floyd, his dad, he was the emergency third netminder for the Oilers at their practices all those years, and Witz was a stick boy there and came up, you know, and was around all those championship teams. He wasn't stupid. He
Right.
took that all in. He was an MVP candidate in the Western Hockey League, which at one time was the best hockey league in the world. Better
Yeah.
even than the NHL. There was so much competition. It was an amazing league to be around. Okay. So, I mean, this is not a surprise to some of us. And you're right about one thing. The game eventually catches up to what is good. And that's what's great about hockey, because it can frustrate you, but in the end, the game will always catch up to greatness. And we see that now in much quicker intervals than we used to see it. Now it's amazing how it turns on a dime, but this is because the world's changed, because athletes are bigger, they're faster, they're quicker, they're stronger. There's variable reasons as to why. Money plays a large part, right? I mean, now the money is so astronomical that if you're not that type player, you don't last, because you have to even be relevant. So, it's such a fascinating game. It's the things that I just love about the game that keep me passionate about it.
Yeah, it's that passion that I think more than any other sport, hockey has that passion that just resonates from young to a little bit older than young, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, older than me. That's pretty old.
That's not what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So after all of that, how did the whole China Sharks thing come into play?
Okay.
You mentioned that Dallas and Vancouver were interested. Of course,
yeah.
No offense to the
after.
Islanders, but they screwed that up. But I mean, how did it all come about?
It came about in 2005. I met a sound expert who was working on 4D audio at the time. And when I left the Sharks and came to Seattle, where I lived for 10 years, I also started a company called DigiCast, and we were the first major streaming company, 24/7. We streamed. At one time, I had every major sports league virtually in the world. You know, everything from UFC to the English Premier League. I mean, we were streaming and showing games before you guys probably even knew that you could stream on a phone. We were doing all of it. And Microsoft, I was a gold level provider for them. So Windows Media got a lot of my content that I was producing. Anyway, so we were looking for audio. I was looking for audio to enhance because, you know, cognitively the pictures, you know, because of bandwidth weren't there at that time. We were streaming the video, but, you know, you had to have T1 lines, you know, to even go and make it relevant to where you would want to do this nonstop. So I had a bit of the future and vision in my mind. I had very high-end advisors that were sort of leading me where we needed to go. So I meet with this guy and he said, "Hey, do you know anything about hockey?" And I go, "Well, yeah, a little bit." This guy doesn't know who I am. And he goes, "Well, I do consulting work for the Chinese government, and they need somebody to help them get their programs together." And I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd talk to him." Well, sure enough, 2 weeks later, I get a call from person representing the Chinese Ice Hockey Association, and they want to fly to San Francisco and meet with me. And, you know, that took about a year of negotiating back and forth. And then in 2006, after the word got out, through it, first and foremost, the NBA, because that's who I wanted to focus on, because I knew they had a massive audience in China. The NBA told me, "No, stay with hockey, because, you know, we're already at the levels we need to be at." So I did, and word got out, and I saw Greg Jameson one night in Vancouver, up there seeing Danny and Randy, and I was still living in Seattle, and he said, "I heard a rumor," and I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Well, we're interested." And we, you know, put the deal together in 2006, and then we oversaw the program. The first year, it was a disaster. The second year, we put Derek Eisler in, a former assistant coach and a guy that was running the Sharks youth program, Junior Sharks, and we got our hands on it. It was still a disaster. And then the third year, I brought in, you know, 5 ex-NHL guys, including Wade Flaherty and Steve McKenna and a number of guys. And, you know, we flipped the program on its head. We're competitive every game. And long and short of it is that after the Soviet Union broke up. Chinese hockey, just like Polish hockey, just like quote unquote East German hockey before it became one Germany again. A lot of these communist supported countries, all of their hockey programs fell apart because the Soviets were good at exporting their type of hockey, and the Chinese were no exception. For many years, they were a Division I, Group B, Group A hybrid back and forth, and they had good players. But after the Soviet Union went away in 89, 90, the Chinese fell on hard times, and it hasn't changed. It's we ramped it back up, but my players got older, and in the system there, they vanquished them all out. And what you'll see now are half the team in the Olympics this year in China. I worked with half those kids when they were U18 national team players, and I spent a lot of time working with them. There's a couple of U20s I worked with, but the rest are, what I proposed to do back in 2007, which was to bring over a number of ex-NHL guys, give them sponsorships, pay them big money for the sponsorships, and then let them have special dual citizenship so that China, when the Olympics finally came, they'd be ready to compete and actually play in games where maybe it's a 7-5 game or a 4-1 game instead of what would have happened had the NHL been in here this year. I mean, it would have been 25 and 30 and 40 to nothing. They would have been slaughtered, okay? And it would have been an ongoing disastrous situation, which in China wouldn't have bode well for anybody, because the spectators are very impatient when a Chinese program is when it's humiliated, or worse, when the athletes don't perform up to standard. The fans can be brutal. So it remains to be seen. I'm like you, waiting to watch tomorrow night, the first game they play the U.S. I think then they get Canada, and it'll be interesting, even with the U.S. being a primarily college program. And then they're actually in the Canadian team, two kids that I worked with in youth hockey and got them both drafted in major junior that are on the Canadian Olympic team. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play this. If they, get a 5, 6, 7 goal lead, then let up and just dump pucks in, and try not to humiliate the home team. It never should have been. They never should have been in the Olympics. They're not qualified for the Olympics. The program's not there yet. The rule I have, and it was from day one in 2005 with the Chinese, which was we had two things. The code name for our project was Yao Ming on ice. Okay, that was the code name for it. Second of all, Chinese hockey will only be relevant when the other 850 million people in China that don't know about Bing Chou, that don't know about hockey, finally learn about it and then get skates on and or visit a rink. Then it will become relevant. And so far they haven't been able to do that because of politics, because of the party, because of what I call deadbeats that hang around and have these jobs. That's who I dealt with in my years there. I had to just force these people away from the program, get away from us, from stealing, okay, which was a big problem. People falsely representing us that had nothing to do with us because the program was in such disarray. So we put that back together and gave it, we gave it an organization, as I like to say, and we gave it a fluidity and a purpose. And, the Olympics are a byproduct, but it's just a shame. The only grace is the NHL's not there, because if they had been there, it'd be an absolute disaster of untold proportions. So maybe there's something positive, but like I said, it's going to take a while.
So a couple of things here. So one, who's in the Olympics that you've kind of helped grow into it, and then two, is there a thought about, well, it'd be tough now, just especially with everything politically wise, but would you want to go back and see if there can be resurrected?
Yes, of course. I've already got a rink building company, and before the pandemic, we were ready to announce multiple school districts in 3 different provinces. We were going to be building arenas on the school grounds, which in China, that's where the power base is in the educational system, where you can go and actually do what you would consider democratically based kinds of deals. Okay, so that's one that's been in place for me for a long time. two, would we want to work? Yes, I've already got an array of former NHL players and also top junior talent developers that I would bring over that I've worked with for years from the first time I left the Sharks. So to answer your questions, yes. The other question you asked concerning, who the players are, I don't have the roster in front of me, but there are at least 8 that will see ice time in the first game tonight. I think there's probably 2 or 3 more that are on the reserve and or maybe even rostered now. I've got to look, but won't probably see a lot of ice time. And I'm proud of them. I know they're excited about it. They were 16, 17. A couple of them were 13 and 14 playing on the U18 national team, but they're good kids. They're way better than the other kids were at their age during their time. And that's because the Russians, who approached myself and Greg Jameson as far back as 2007, 2008, and wanted us to own and operate a KHL team out of Beijing, which obviously we declined because we were trying to buy the Coyotes at that time and own an NHL team. We couldn't do both, but the Russians have gone in and have done a good job. Okay, they've done a great job expanding the curve, but the problem is the curve is so small and the numbers are so small. The only way you're going to grow the curve is that you have to get the masses to push in like they do with basketball naturally, right? Because that was Mao's favorite sport, and Mao made sure that after the revolution there were basketball hoops everywhere. Okay, and we see now, they have a competitive national league. Americans go over and play in pro basketball there, but hockey hasn't gotten there yet. It will. And I can give you some updates after the first couple of games. I'll send you some names of the kids that we worked with. And obviously I'm going to tape it and see if I can watch them. I'll let you know what I think. But I'm happy for them, but for you and for me, it's different, right? We see it as a global situation. We see what the Olympics really are. We know we're Americans. For them, it's different, okay? 3/4 of the Chinese have never been out of their own provinces, let alone their own major city. Like, it would be like, you or I going to the South Pole, okay, for a visit, right, for a lot of them. So, this is a huge deal from within for them, okay, to represent. They're not as global as you and I would be, comfortably talking about these things. So it's a whole different mentality, how and why they're doing this. And, it's going to be interesting. Post-Olympics are going to be very interesting. And yes, I still have my hands there, but, obviously with the pandemic and the Olympics, I've taken a back seat because there's a lot of politics going on, and there's going to be a lot of bloodletting after the Olympics. Just trust me on that.
Yeah, that's going to be a rough one. But like you said, I think there's a little bit of pride in being proud of having, helping those kids, develop into what's going to happen in the next, day or two, which, stick taps to you, my friend, and for growing in the game.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I feel very lucky, and I love the Chinese people. I love China. So, I don't have, the politics are one thing. I worked in politics my whole life. I've run campaigns, all parties, I've worked with people, different governors. I know what politics are. And, with the Chinese, I have that attitude, and it's been good because they like the fact that I don't get hung up on this stuff. I'm over there to help people, and let's get to know each other better, and, let's work for the better common good. And doesn't mean I didn't fight with, or protect my grounds, but, the Chinese were good about that. They respected that. Even if maybe we didn't like each other personally, certain people, we at least respected each other because they knew that, I wanted what was right. And it's a big difference.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you, bud. Like I said, this has been a long time coming, chatting with you, going through your timeline of, doing what you've done with the Seals, Shamrocks, Sharks, and then doing with the China Sharks. I thought it'd be a really cool story to share at this time. So, Chris Collins, my friend, thank you very much as always.
Thank you, brother.
And
all right,
take care.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man. All the best.
Thank you. You too.